Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you've ever felt reduced to a stereotype before you even open your mouth, stay with me, because what I'm about to say may unsettle you. Many women believe men only want sex, and that belief quietly shapes every date, every text, every test you never knew you were taking. Before we go deeper, take a second to subscribe and like this video because what you're about to hear isn't popular, but it is freeing. I'm speaking to you as a psychologist and as a woman who has listened to thousands of private confessions. Here's the truth men are rarely told. Women don't start by assuming you're shallow. They arrive there after years of emotional pattern recognition. From adolescence onward, many women are pursued without being seen. Compliments land on bodies, not minds. Attention spikes, then vanishes. Promises feel conditional. Over time, the nervous system learns a shortcut. Interest equals desire. Desire equals danger. So when you show up, even grounded and sincere, you inherit a history that isn't yours. That's the unfair part. And here's where the misunderstanding deepens. Men often communicate care through action and restraint. You may hold back words, pace intimacy, or show up consistently, believing steadiness speaks. But in a culture loud with performative desire, silence gets misread. Calm gets mistaken for hunger in disguise. Boundaries look like strategy. This is not because women are cynical, it's because ambiguity once cost them safety or self-worth. Now listen closely. Wanting sex is not the problem. Sex is not the accusation. The fear is disposability. The fear is that once intimacy happens, curiosity evaporates, that the listening stops, that effort expires. When women say, men only want sex, they are often naming a pattern where emotional presence ends at physical closeness. If this has frustrated you, good. Frustration means you care about being understood. The work is not to argue the stereotype away. The work is to communicate value before desire, interest beyond access, and patience without performance. When that lands, the story changes. Not instantly, but meaningfully. And you become legible in a world trained to mistrust. Stay present, stay honest, and remember that clarity builds trust faster than charm ever could. When your actions align with your words and your timing respects her agency, consistency slowly rewires expectation, and curiosity finally has room to breathe for you both. There's something else most men are never told, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Women don't judge intention the way men do. They judge trajectory. What usually convinces a woman that a man only wants sex isn't his desire, it's his pacing. How fast he pushes, how quickly conversations tilt toward bodies, how soon emotional depth is traded for physical escalation. Even when it's subtle, the nervous system notices the direction things are moving. From a psychological standpoint, women are constantly tracking investment patterns. Are you curious about her inner world when nothing sexual is on the table? Do you still show interest when boundaries slow things down? Do you remain engaged when gratification is delayed? These moments matter more than grand gestures, because many women have learned that attention before sex is cheap, but attention after restraint is rare. Here's where men often feel misunderstood. You may think, I'm attracted to her, of course I want her physically, that's normal. And you're right, healthy desire is normal. But what women are scanning for is not attraction, it's regulation. Can you hold desire without letting it hijack your behavior? Can you tolerate tension without trying to resolve it through access? That ability signals emotional maturity far more loudly than words ever could. When desire isn't regulated, it starts to feel extractive. Conversations subtly revolve around availability. Compliments narrow. Emotional curiosity fades into strategic niceness. Even well-meaning men can fall into this without realizing it. And when that happens repeatedly across relationships, women stop personalizing it. They generalize, not because they hate men, but because the pattern feels statistically safer than hope. Another truth that stings a little: many women don't feel wanted for who they are until after they withhold sex. That's backwards, but it's common. So when a man shows patience, consistency, and genuine interest without pressure, it disrupts expectation. It creates cognitive dissonance, and dissonance opens the door to trust. This is where power shifts, not dominance, not control, psychological safety. When a woman feels she isn't being rushed toward a finish line, she starts to relax. When she relaxes, she reveals more. When she reveals more, intimacy deepens. And suddenly, sex isn't the proof of interest. It's the byproduct of connection. Men who understand this stop feeling rejected by caution. They stop taking boundaries personally. They recognize that restraint isn't resistance, it's assessment. And when you pass that assessment without resentment, without pressure, you quietly separate yourself from the stereotype that never belonged to you in the first place. Here's a hard truth that most men never hear. Women are constantly decoding your emotional economy. Every glance, every pause, every hesitation is tracked, often unconsciously. They are not just looking at what you want. They are measuring how you want it. Are your desires patient? Are they curious? Or are they transactional? This is what turns attraction into suspicion. And once suspicion takes root, even the purest intentions are filtered through a lens of past disappointment. Think about it. A man can say all the right things, dress impeccably, and act charming. But if his actions suggest, even subtly, that intimacy is the end goal rather than the journey, the message is already compromised. Women aren't anti-sex, they're anti-disposability. They want to feel that their value extends beyond the physical, that their essence, not just their body, is seen, appreciated, and sought after. And here's where most men get it wrong. They mistake flirtation for freedom, attention for trust, and persistence for proof of worth. In reality, women are scanning for emotional constancy more than sexual constancy. The difference is subtle but critical. Emotional constancy means your engagement doesn't spike only when there's opportunity for sex. Emotional constancy means curiosity about her mind, her dreams, her fears, continues regardless of physical access. That's what reassures her that your desire isn't conditional. That's what shifts the narrative from all men want sex to this man sees me fully. Now, here's the paradox. Desire is essential, but the way it's expressed can either build connection or destroy it. Raw, unchecked desire signals urgency, which triggers caution. Strategic withdrawal signals safety, which triggers trust. That's why men who understand pacing and regulation create attraction effortlessly. They don't chase, they cultivate. They don't consume, they invest. Most men never realize that what they think is a natural rhythm, subtle pressure, casual nudges, innocent jokes, is being read as a test. Is this about me or about what he wants from me? And women, having learned that self-protection is survival, often default to what he wants from me until proven otherwise. That doesn't make them cold. That makes them cautious, precise, and protective of their emotional energy. Once a man grasps this, he can stop fighting perceived resistance and start navigating attraction with strategy and empathy. He becomes legible in a language women instinctively understand. And when that happens, he doesn't just avoid the stereotype, he flips it. He becomes the man women think exists only in theory, patient, attuned, and compelling, not because of what he wants from her body, but because of what he values in her mind and spirit. Here's something most men never hear from anyone. Women don't fear desire. They fear disposability disguised as desire. What does that mean? It means that when a woman says men only want sex, she isn't talking about attraction. She's talking about patterns. Patterns where intimacy comes first, attention disappears second, and emotional presence evaporates entirely. Over time, those patterns create a filter. She no longer sees individual intent. She sees probability. Now think about what that does to you. You show up genuinely interested, respectful, patient, and she still hesitates. It's frustrating, confusing, maybe even infuriating, but it's not personal. She isn't rejecting you. She's evaluating safety. She's checking if your desire is a bridge or a trap. Every man who has felt unfairly dismissed here is actually experiencing a test, but it's not a test you can cheat. You can't fake curiosity or patience or restraint. Authenticity is the only way to pass. And let me be blunt. Most men fail this test without even knowing it. Why? Because society has trained men to equate attention with reward. Compliment, flirt, escalate, repeat. Women experience this as transactional and exhausting. They don't remember the gestures. They remember the pattern. The subconscious messaging says, He's only here for me when I can give something. That's what sparks the stereotype. All men only want sex. Here's the upside. You can change the pattern for yourself. And it's simpler than you think. The key is consistency. Show interest without expectation. Ask questions without seeking answers that feed your ego. Compliment her mind before her body. Let her voice matter and actually listen. This is what flips the narrative. This is what rewires perception. It isn't fast, it isn't flashy, but it works. Desire will always exist. Attraction will always exist. The difference is what drives your behavior. Desire without self-regulation breeds suspicion. Desire with patience breeds trust. Men who master this quietly become magnetic, not because of how they look or what they say or even what they do, but because they are safe to desire. When you understand this, rejection no longer feels like personal failure. Boundaries no longer feel like resistance. Attention is no longer transactional. You begin to operate in a space where women actually want to invest in you, not because of sex, but because you've demonstrated the rarest commodity, emotional clarity. And make no mistake, that is more powerful than charm, wealth, or confidence. It is irresistible. If you're still watching, take a moment to hit like and subscribe, because the truths I'm revealing are the kind that don't circulate publicly. They're the ones that quietly change the way men and women connect. They make you legible in a world where most intentions are misunderstood. They make desire meaningful instead of disposable. Here's the part most men never realize. Women are constantly scanning for alignment between your words and your actions. They aren't fooled by charm, gestures, or even verbal assurances. What they notice, what sticks, is congruence. Does what you say match what you do? Are your boundaries respected? Is your interest consistent, even when physical access is delayed? This is what separates men who are written off as just wanting sex from men who are seen as rare, compelling, and trustworthy. Think about it. A woman experiences countless small signals every day. A compliment offered and then forgotten. A text that disappears for days. Effort that spikes when convenient and vanishes when not. Over time, her nervous system constructs a survival algorithm. Interest that is conditional equals potential harm. So when you arrive, even with pure intentions, she interprets your signals against a history of inconsistency. She asks herself, is this real, or is this the same pattern again? Here's the critical truth. Most men fail without realizing it because they focus on desire instead of presence. You may be thinking, if I show her I want her, she'll see I care. But that's only half the story. Presence matters far more than desire. Being present means your attention isn't transactional. It's not a tool to achieve intimacy. It's a demonstration of value beyond access. And when women sense this, everything changes. The assumption that men only want sex begins to crumble. Another layer, emotional regulation. Women notice tension, impatience, and subtle frustration long before words are spoken. A man's inner state leaks. It shapes every interaction. If you're eager, anxious, or internally bargaining, she senses it, and that triggers the very stereotype you're trying to avoid. Calm, grounded presence communicates a far deeper message, that you desire her without being dependent on her for fulfillment. That's magnetic in a way that attraction alone can't achieve. Here's the paradox most men miss. Sexual desire is not the enemy. In fact, it's necessary for connection. But if it leads the conversation, it becomes a weapon against trust. Desire should flow alongside curiosity, attention, and patience, not ahead of it. Men who master this rhythm create an invisible emotional gravity that draws women in naturally. It's not about tricks or manipulation. It's about becoming legible in a culture that has trained women to misread intention. When you consistently communicate value beyond desire, boundaries are no longer walls, they're gateways. Hesitation becomes interest, and the stereotype that men only want sex, it starts to feel like someone else's problem, not yours. You begin operating in a space of trust, connection, and magnetic presence that most men only dream about, and that is the exact space women want to enter, not because of sex, but because they finally feel understood and safe. Here's a truth that cuts deeper than most men are ready to hear. Women don't just respond to what you say, They respond to what you don't say. Silence, pauses, measured responses. These are louder than words. They reveal whether your interest is desperate or deliberate, fleeting or steady, surface level or deeply anchored. Women scan for this instinctively, and it shapes every decision they make about trust, attraction, and intimacy. Most men make the mistake of over-communicating desire. They try too hard to prove themselves, thinking words or actions will convince her of authenticity. But here's the paradox. Authenticity is rarely proven. It's felt. And what she feels most acutely is whether your desire is a tool for consumption or a reflection of appreciation. Does it shrink her into an object, or does it expand her sense of being seen? That's what she's watching. That's what she's testing. Think about every time a woman has hesitated or pulled away. It isn't always about you. Often it's about patterns she has internalized from countless interactions where men's desire was contingent, conditional, or self-serving. She doesn't need a lecture on your intentions. She needs consistency. She needs patience. She needs presence. When a man shows these things, he instantly distinguishes himself from the stereotype. Here's the secret many men miss. Attraction grows strongest when desire is regulated, not unleashed. When you can hold attraction without letting it dictate your behavior, women perceive emotional depth they rarely encounter. And depth is magnetic. Desire is no longer threatening. It becomes a bridge rather than a barrier. When your attention is steady and your interest is patient, she begins to see a man who values her for far more than the immediate payoff. Another critical point, women are subconsciously measuring your ability to tolerate tension. Every boundary she sets, every pause she takes, every moment of uncertainty is a small test. Can you handle it without anxiety, without pressure, without manipulation? Men who pass this test create an invisible trust. Men who fail reinforce the very stereotype they wish to escape. So stop fighting perceived resistance. Stop interpreting her caution as rejection. Start observing the signals that truly matter. Consistency, patience, emotional regulation, and curiosity about her mind. These are the currencies that reshape perception. When she experiences them, she doesn't just believe you're different, she feels it. And once she feels it, the walls that led to men only want sex begin to dissolve, replaced by genuine attraction, connection, and trust. This is the invisible work most men never learn, yet it separates ordinary attraction from something far deeper and lasting. It's subtle, it's deliberate, and it's far more powerful than any shortcut you've been taught. Here's something few men ever realize. Women measure predictability and integrity far more than excitement or charm. Think about it. Excitement is easy to manufacture. Charm can be rehearsed. But integrity, consistency, showing up the same way, day after day, in ways that align with your words and your intentions, that is rare. That is magnetic. And it's what women are truly testing when they seem to doubt your motives. Most men make the mistake of overestimating how much verbal assurance matters. They say the right things, they promise, they reassure, but their actions tell a different story. Women don't respond to promises. They respond to proof, emotional proof, behavioral proof. Every gesture, every interaction, every delayed response is cataloged, consciously or not, and contributes to the story she tells herself. Does this man want me, or does he only want something from me? Here's where men get frustrated. The more you try to force belief, the more you trigger suspicion. She senses urgency, subtle pressure, impatience, and her mind flips into protective mode. That's the trap most men fall into. The very desire you're trying to communicate becomes the evidence she fears. But there's a way out. The solution isn't grand gestures. It's quiet mastery of attention, curiosity, and emotional presence. When you cultivate patience and demonstrate interest beyond physical access, something incredible happens. The lens shifts. She starts to see you as someone rare, someone who values her mind, her essence, her boundaries. Desire doesn't disappear. It becomes meaningful instead of disposable. It transforms from a stereotype into an invitation. And once that shift occurs, everything changes. You are no longer just another man in a pattern. You are the exception. Another layer, emotional safety. Women instinctively check whether their feelings, opinions, and boundaries are respected. Can they reveal their true selves without being judged or pressured? Can they speak without being reduced to a body? The men who pass this unspoken test do so by listening, observing, and responding in ways that honor her reality. This is more persuasive than words, more compelling than charm, and far more enduring than physical attraction alone. Here's the final truth for this section. When your actions consistently match your intentions, you don't just break the stereotype, you rewrite the rules. Women begin to relax, to trust, to engage. They don't just see your desire, they feel the respect, curiosity, and steadiness behind it. And when that happens, intimacy becomes inevitable, not forced. Desire and connection merge naturally, safely, and powerfully. You're no longer playing a game of assumption and misinterpretation. You're operating in a space where women finally recognize what most men never learn. The difference between wanting her body and valuing her mind is everything, and that difference changes everything. Here's the ultimate truth most men never get. Women's belief that men only want sex is not a judgment of your character. It's a defense mechanism built from experience, observation, and instinct. It's not personal, it's statistical. But the men who break through that barrier aren't extraordinary because of looks, wealth, or charm. They're extraordinary because of presence. They show up consistently, attentively, and without hidden agendas. That's the real game. Every interaction is being scanned for congruence. Does your energy match your words? Do you show genuine curiosity about her mind? Or is it all about physical access? Can you tolerate hesitation without frustration, or does impatience leak through? These are the invisible markers women read in seconds, and they are far more persuasive than anything you can say to convince her otherwise. Here's where most men get it wrong. They think proving desire or interest will earn trust, but desire without regulation triggers suspicion. Interest without patience triggers doubt. The men who succeed are the ones who communicate emotional constancy, who are consistent when no one is watching, and who demonstrate care without expecting reciprocity. That's magnetic. That's compelling. That's what transforms perception from skepticism to trust. Let me be clear. This doesn't mean suppressing attraction. Desire is natural, healthy, and essential, but it must be expressed alongside curiosity, patience, and respect. When women sense that your desire is not contingent on access, something shifts in their nervous system. They feel safe, they feel seen, and only when safety exists does authentic connection and, yes, physical intimacy become possible. Most men overlook this because it's invisible work. It's quiet, it's deliberate, it doesn't look flashy, but it rewires perception at a deep, instinctual level. Women begin to internalize a new narrative. That you are different, that your interest is real, and that you value them beyond physicality. That narrative replaces fear with curiosity, suspicion with openness, and stereotypes with understanding. Here's the takeaway. Stop trying to fight the stereotype with arguments, charm, or effort aimed at outcomes. Stop seeing boundaries as obstacles. See them as a test of your own emotional regulation, patience, and presence. Master those, and the stereotype dissolves naturally. Women stop expecting men to only want sex because they finally see one who doesn't. The men who truly understand this operate in a rare space where desire is meaningful, connection is deep, and intimacy is earned, not extracted. That is the real power, the kind that commands attention, respect, and attraction effortlessly. When you become that man, you don't just avoid the stereotype, you transcend it. You become the exception every woman secretly hopes exists.